Greetings and salutations. I wanted to follow up, as I said that I would, with the big five numbers from the International Spa Association. If you're not a member or don't know, they just had their annual conference in Colorado Springs this past week. Some of the people were on the Denver flight, American Airlines, so sending prayers out to them. But I wanted to follow up because I think what I said last time was like 22 and 21, and now I have the numbers for 23 and 24. All right, so revenue for 2023 was 21.3 billion. Revenue for 24 was 22.5 billion, which is up 5.8%. Spa visits also increased. They were 182 million in 2023 and 187 million in 2024. That's an increase of 3.1%. Locations usually is about the same. 23, there was 21,840. 24, there was 21,980. A 0.6 change. And then revenue per visit also increased. In 2023, it was $117.20. And in 2024, it was $120.30. That is a 2.6% increase. The number of employees has also increased. So total 370 and 100 in 2024, and January 2025, there were 376 and 200, so a 1.6 increase. So what's the point of this? Why share this information? Well, one, it's always interesting to understand the amount of revenue that our industry generates. And if you step back and really look at it, it's usually more than movie theater sales as well as amusement parks, right? So it's a high generating industry. Golf continues to beat us, and like recreation. But thinking about like what can you charge, those different things, looking at spa visits, we're definitely seeing an uptick year over year in the number of visits, in the revenue that's being generated. Now, it's important to note that day spas comprise 80% of the industry, according to ISPA. Hotel spas are about 7.5, a little more than 7%, but hotel spas generate more revenue. Now, why is that? Well, when I was the director of spa for a major hotel brand, I had services. You could book the room for either $400 or $800, 4 hours or 8 hours. So understanding that those prices have since gone up. But when you have that kind of revenue coming in, you're going to be able to just generate more month over month. Unlike day spas, when I had a day spa, we did not have a $400 or $800 treatment. They were closer to 80s and 90s and 100, but that has been almost 20 years. So prices have gone up. Understanding, looking at where your location is helps to dictate what your pricing can be, what demand is, and then what is the uniqueness that you offer. If you're looking at sustainable, if you're looking at organic, green, if you're looking at luxury, if you have various amenities, then you can charge more accordingly. So keeping that in mind, that is a lot of times very difficult for day spas. They just don't have the budget in the build out that resorts and hotel spas have, just because they kind of get folded into the hotel. There are some exceptions, but most don't pay rent at the location. So the overhead is not quite the same necessarily, depending on what the pay structure is, what the benefits and perks are for the company can also dictate, payroll. I just did a podcast the other day, and the gentleman was like, oh, probably like your water and your electricity were so expensive. And I was like, nothing compared to how much I paid for labor. Their payment structure was archaic, where it was 50% plus 50% commission, plus a whole bunch of perks that if I had to give a 10% discount, I literally made no money off of the service. So it was a really bad structure, payment structure for that particular location. So, we have this conversation. I really don't talk about social media that much. We do talk about AI, but there's important things that you need to know, and you need to know it better than anybody else when it comes to your business and your company. You need to understand what is your payment structure, and does that, evolve or change, and what is that really costing you, service over service, hour over hour, day over day, week, month, right? Because if you have an archaic payment structure, then you're never going to be able to get ahead. And we've talked about it many times before that, the revenue generating and the profitability in the spa and wellness sector, even for larger institutions, is low. And being in the US, we are very labor driven, trying to find the individuals, trying to provide that consistency definitely continues to be a challenge. So understanding what your payment structure is, looking at, can you increase that? They just did have ISPA, and there are some other shows that are coming up. IECSC was just in New York. I'll be at the Las Vegas show. There's a ton of, suppliers, vendors, manufacturers, and coming in and looking at what is the offering, and is that something that you can bring into your location with a higher price point to be able to increase not only the revenue generated, but also the profitability. Because those are two different things. Revenue is the money created. Profitability is what you get to keep after you've paid out everything else, right? So you can have a very high revenue and a very small profitability. And that's why it's so important to look at things like pay structure. It's important to look at the pricing of your services that you're offering. What is your uniqueness? What is it that you're doing that nobody else is doing? And making sure that you do that better, that you're promoting that, because that does allow for maybe a slight increase in what you can pay, what you can charge. Now, there always are exceptions. I think about where my parents lived, and I would go get a massage for $60, and it was legit. Like, it was a fantastic massage. The person was trained, all of the things, but just they didn't charge a lot for those spa services. It just wasn't a part of the culture. And so you just didn't have those major price points. So when you're overcoming something like that, it can be a little bit more difficult to be able to increase those prices. But I'll give you the 80-20 rule, right? So 20% of your revenue, 80% of your revenue usually comes from 20% of your clientele. So really thinking about those repeat guests, those loyal guests, what is it that you can do to enhance their experience, their time, so that they will continue to come back over and over and over again, right? And that's where you can start incorporating some of that AI to be able to create these customized, personalized, wellness treatment paths, experiences. You've liked this in the past, let me suggest this for you. But really tapping into that 20%, and then also understanding your location. Speaking of spa visits, what days do you have the most spa visits? What days do you have the least spa visits? And then being able to maximize that. So having different offerings on the days that might not have the most visits. Those could be your lunch and learn days. Those can be your activity days, your group effort days, getting creative with the space. But, I think it's important to first understand what's happening in the industry overall with the spa visits, with the revenue that's being generated, and then how do you implement that? How do you use that information in your location? And if you have questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is thespasos@gmail.com. I'm also at thespasos on Facebook as well as Instagram. And so with that, take the information, apply it, and use it, and be well, and I'll see you next time.